My rule when it comes to delegation, if someone can do it 80% as well as you can, delegate. The hardest role that I had to replace myself was the tutoring role. People think franchising is copy and paste. There are definitely some differences when you look at different markets. AI is equivalent to the Industrial Revolution or even more. It's completely transformed the way people do business.
Most people think success comes from having the right qualifications, more experience, or waiting until the timing is perfect. Today's guest didn't wait. At just 17 years old, he started a tutoring business with a simple idea. Students don't just struggle with schoolwork, they struggle with confidence, belief in themselves, and feeling like they're capable of more. What started as one tutoring center has grown into an international franchise. But what interests me most isn't the business itself. It's how he spotted a problem that others were missing. Because whether you're building a company, leading a team, raising kids, or chasing a dream, success often comes down to the same thing: helping people believe they're capable of more than they think. Today, we're talking about spotting opportunities, building systems at scale, leading people, and what it really takes to grow something bigger than yourself. I'm Linda Vo, and this is Inspired by Success. Let's welcome to the show, Michael Black.
Hey, Linda. Very nice to be here. Looking forward to it.
I'm really excited about this because I want to build my own franchise, and surely a lot of other listeners will probably want to build their own franchise too. So tell me about your journey. You started at the young age of just 17, and most teenagers at that age are not thinking of entrepreneurship and building a business. So what made you start that journey, and how did it all start? Tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, for sure. Success Tutoring started when I was 17. I'm 27 now, so it's been about 10 years. I started in a spare room in my parents' home. And the reason why I started the business was because I wanted to give back and provide a good tutoring and good service to students that were basically in high school. So I was focusing mainly on year 11 and year 12 students to begin with. And I really wanted to help them. And basically also studying, I did a Bachelor of Commerce. I'm majoring in management and law at the University of Sydney. So while I was studying, I wanted to do something on the side. And that was sort of that business. It sort of, quickly grew, and I continued to invest a lot of time and energy into it, which resulted in where we are today.
That's powerful. And have you done it all solo? At the start, you would have done it solo, but then did you bring any partners in? Tell us a little bit about once you realized it was successful, and when was the right time to start building the franchise model?
Yeah, so I started because I just wanted to help and make a bit of extra money on the side while I was studying. So the degree goes for about 3 years. So while I was studying, my focus was to do this on the side while I graduate and then hopefully work in corporate life. But I quickly realized that I actually have very strong passion for business and seeing a business grow. So I continued growing the business. In terms of the franchising side of things, I didn't intend to franchise it to begin with. My goal was just to, as I said, like a bit of a side hustle or something to help me get by while I was at university. But then I saw the business grew. I saw the smiles on the students' faces, parents really enjoying seeing the results of the kids, like telling their friends and family, seeing the tutors, like that sort of whole ecosystem really inspired me. And I was like, well, I really like what I do, so why don't I just keep going at it? And I ran the business for about 2 years, and then I ended up signing a lease for a commercial space. And that was a second location that I had. So I operating out of my parents' home, basically in a spare room while, we had kids coming in and out and doing all the tutoring there. But then I decided at the age of 20 that actually I want to sign a commercial lease. And I signed the lease, and we opened up that center and we began hiring staff, bringing in the customers and all that sort of stuff. Felt kind of like being on a roller coaster in a way, because I didn't really know what I was signing up for in business. And I'm sure a lot of your audience would agree with me. Like, you don't know the answer. Like, you sort of figure it out along the way. You're never 100% prepared for anything that business or life throws at you. You just sort of have to be good at riding the wave and be sort of spontaneous in some respect and just learn and be adaptive. I think of business like being a surfer. When you ride the wave, you have to be balanced, but you also have to be very adaptive. Every wave that you ride is different. And it's the same thing with business. Like, you can't expect every day to be the same. And so that was the sort of mentality that I had. And it was also the mentality of, hey, like, we've got one shot at this. We've got life. Most people live to the age of maybe, 80, 90 if you're really lucky, maybe even more. But you just have that one life and you just got to give it your best shot. And that was the sort of mentality that I had, and I still have to this day. I live life to the fullest, and I just go in and be like, okay, if it works, it works. That's great. If it doesn't, you learn and then you adapt. The key thing I'd say is you got to make sure any mistake you make doesn't wipe you out. You got to make sure if you're going to make a decision, it's got to be calculated, but you can't be too risk averse. You got to really push yourself for sure.
Take us back, because you got your first commercial lease and you were still young, and I'm sure like you would have had a lot of calculated risk too, because a lot of people go into business and they ultimately fail as well. So I'm here to learn about the nitty gritty failure, like the dark side of business as well. So surely either you were very lucky or you had a lot of dark challenges and tough times as well, or was it that calculated? Tell me about the journey, and I want to hear the nitty gritty stuff as well. Like, we can't grow without all these challenges that you mentioned. It's definitely the mindset that helps us come out of it. But was there a time when you just wanted to give up, or was it always calculated and you've got a brilliant mind? I want to hear about the times that you wanted to give up. Was there any times like that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I want to give up probably every few months. It's normal, like it's normal, and anyone that says otherwise is probably not saying the truth, because the reality is business is hard, right? Elon Musk says running a business is like eating glass and staring into the abyss. Now, it's quite dramatic,
Wow.
but I kind of understand what he means, because the reality is, especially as being a CEO of any company, you're basically a filter for all the bad things that happen. So you've got a team, an amazing team, but then anything bad that happens gets escalated to you as a CEO. So basically, especially for any leader of any organization, you're basically dealing with the worst things every single day, and you're having to find solutions for it. Now, you've got a brilliant team, you build the systems, you build the processes, you let them manage and run the business. But as a CEO, you've got that strategy and you've got to be able to sort of adapt and learn. Now, in order to achieve success, and this is something that I've learned 10 years of doing business, is that you've got to make mistakes and you've got to have failures, because otherwise you don't learn. And success is great, but success only means something when you know what the opposite of success is. And so as I do business more and more every year, I start to appreciate those times where it's like, okay, we've made a mistake. How do we adapt? How do we fix that so we can become stronger? Right? It's like that bit of a cheesy line: whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That's what it is. Because business, you don't have to be a genius. Like, I don't consider myself like intelligent or somebody that has like an encyclopedia or something. I'm not like that at all. But what I am is I am determined, I am persistent, and I do not give up. And so if you've got those things, you can achieve some really, really amazing results. And so, yes, I have had a lot of failures. When I started in business, I didn't really have too many like people that I could rely on, like in terms of like support. Like, for example, like my parents, like they never sort of came from like a business or anything like that. So I was sort of like, among the first people in my family to have a business and sort of learn. And for example, the example I gave about signing a lease, I had no idea how to sign a lease. Like, I didn't know what sort of negotiating points I'd have to go into, all of those. And so the first lease I signed arguably might have not been the best commercial deal, but I was 20 years old and I was determined to make it work. So I signed it and I went ahead with the business. So it's okay not to know everything. That's fine. But you also have to have that sort of determination and that drive. Something that I really, really like in terms of like mindset about business is having that sort of childlike thinking in your mind. Like, I think it's really important to have those dreams and just aspire and achieve more with those, because some people will say, oh, like, you've got these really, really big dreams, you've got to be more realistic. I don't believe in that. Some people probably disagree with me. I believe any child can achieve whatever they put their mind towards, and that's what we do at Success Tutoring. And that comes from my own story. I grew up in middle class Australia, western suburbs of Sydney. Parents weren't like business people or anything like that, sort of, self-made. And that's the same mindset that I have for every child that walks into our centers, is that they can achieve whatever they put their mind towards, as long as they have the hard work, determination, and grit to make it happen.
I love that. That's powerful. And yeah, your story resonates because the first entrepreneur in your family learning all these things is definitely a strong mindset that comes with it. So I'm curious to know also, when you mentioned you didn't have your parents, did you have any inspiration or books that helped you and guided you on your journey? And if you can share that, and also daily practices that helped you keep your vision strong as well.
Yeah, well, there was a book which has definitely changed my life, and that book is called The Power of Positive Thinking, and it's written by a gentleman by the name of Norman Vincent Peale. It's one of the most popular self-help books in the world. Norman Vincent Peale was a pastor in New York, and he had probably, I would say, one of the best sort of sermons and understanding of how to live a very good life, but also live a very faithful life. But that really impacted me. I'm pretty open about my faith. Like, I'm a Christian. So I really believe like a lot of those fundamental understandings, like morals and ethics, like govern how you do business. And I believe when you do the right thing by people, you achieve amazing results. And for me, having that mindset is super important. So for some people, maybe not so much, but I'd say the overall majority of entrepreneurs that I speak with, mindset is so, so important, because you can feel like the whole world is crashing down, but the reality is, if you've got the right mindset, you can get out of it. Okay. It also depends on your mindset, because some issues you might think, oh, that's a really, really big problem. But when you actually look at it, it's really not that big. But you put it in your head and you think, oh, like this must be a huge problem. So I think having the mindset and being able to actually adapt is super important. And whatever anyone's, sort of faith or moral, ethical guardrails are, I think it's important to have a solidified understanding of what those are. So then when you can make those tough decisions, you know exactly what you're using. Like, you need a formula to make decisions, basically. You can't just go in thinking, I'll just see. You got to have something that you stand firm with and say, okay, this is what I am. This is what I stand for. And it doesn't matter what life throws at me. I will stick to these very principles, because those principles govern how I do my life. They govern how I speak to people, how I deal with situations. And if you do that, you'll sleep very comfortable at the end of the day. But if you extremely fluid in your fundamental understanding of like how you do business or how you treat people, then it can effectively, I think, really affect how someone does business.
I love it. That's very beautiful, and it definitely resonates if you can apply these values and principles from your personal life into the business. It will show, and the energy will show as well. So show in terms of your leadership and your business skills, and people actually are drawn to a positive person as well. So now I want to talk about building and scaling in the systems. And what was the first system or process you put in place that allowed the business to grow without everything relying on you? Because as a franchise owner, you'd need to be pretty systemized. Did you create your own systems in order to be able to franchise, or did you get help doing that? Because for those listeners that want to create their own franchise, share your journey and how you built those systems in order to make it work, because I want to touch really deep into that too.
At every stage of business, you create systems for growth. Now, I think of this like we'll start off with building a house, right? You need to have the fundamentals to build a house. You need to have the foundation, right? Now, if you're planning to build a 2-story house, the foundation is going to be different from a 1-story house. And then if you're trying to build a apartment building, the foundation is going to be different. And then if you're trying to build a skyscraper, the foundation is going to be more different as well. So what I mean to say is, depending on how big you want to grow the business, the fundamentals and the foundation needs to change. And that's what I think of as the systems. Now, our systems have changed every single step. I'd say minimum every 2 years, our systems have changed. In fact, this year, we doubled our number of locations. We started off with we actually more than doubled. We started off with about 25 locations. This year, we've got 60 now. And then by the end of the year, we're
Wow.
actually expecting to reach very close to 100. We're not quite sure if we'll get there, but that's not our focus. Our focus is growing the business sustainably. But basically, the foundations always change. Okay. So, and what I mean by the foundations, I mean the systems. Now, in franchising, there's a very popular word which you hear everyone use, and that is called the operations manual, or what some people call it as SOPs, standard operation procedures. And so that is effectively the A to Z way of doing the business. So like basically like running the business, like how do you greet customers? How do you issue a refund? Basically every single thing when it comes to actually running a business. So creating a step-by-step process on everything. And that changes as systems develop, as things in business change, that definitely changes. And so it's about documentation, and it's about making it very clear and easy for people to follow, because franchising is the business of replication. It's the business of training and support. It's the business of supporting other people to use a proven model to make it successful. And so the only way you can do that is by addressing what makes the business unique, documenting it, and then going forward and saying to people, okay, this is the policy, this is the operations manual. Now go out and follow it and make it a success.
Did you leverage as well, or are you bootstrapping all this whole franchise? Like, did you use leverage?
So basically, when I started the business, I started in a spare room. First thing I invested in was a $250 car magnet that had the business name and my phone number on it, and I put it on the car. After that, I basically every cent that the business has earned, I've basically reinvested back into the business. We don't have any external investors. We continue to bootstrap and reinvest everything back in. That's what I've been doing from day one.
What mistakes did you make when you scaled? And is there anything that you'd avoid if you had to start all over again?
Every mistake I've made, I wouldn't go back and change it. I like the mistakes that I've made, actually. You think that's a bit weird, but it's true. Because every time retrospectively I look at the mistake, I actually think of it as a good learning curve. And if I didn't have that mistake, I'd probably have maybe some advisor or external person that has experience to actually say to me, hey, you shouldn't do that. I'd probably follow what they say, but I wouldn't have the scars. I think it's good to have scars, like battle scars, because then you can actually learn and be able to tell other people from your experience. It's about telling the story as well. In terms of mistakes, yeah, I've made heaps of mistakes. Early days, not really understanding how sort of business works. I think signing a lease, maybe it wasn't like the right commercial sort of decision in terms of the terms. I was negotiating it on my own. So I would advise somebody if they're going to be signing a commercial lease to actually get some advice. I did get some advice, but not so much commercial, more sort of legal. So that's important. Another thing is like understanding the fundamentals of business. Like if you're doing business in Australia, for example, it's very different from doing business in other countries. So like in Australia, employment law is extremely complex in my opinion, and it requires a lot of understanding in terms of what minimum rates you've got to pay, what sort of entitlements employees have. Like these fundamental things you really, really need to understand, because if you get them incorrect, it can really affect the business's reputation, and it could also affect your relationship and partnership with your team member. That's important. Those are two key ones. I'm sure there's many more, but as I said, every single experience is good because then you can learn from it.
And a lot of entrepreneurs, they are the bottlenecks of their business in terms of scaling as well. So have you struggled with that, and how did you fix that solution? Because I know entrepreneurs that like to they believe that they can do it all themselves and no one else can do it as good as them. And that becomes a bottleneck as well. For me, I like to try to free up my time as much as possible and then document what I do so I can pass it on to somebody that I can trust as well. But, what are your thoughts on entrepreneurs who become their own bottleneck and get in the way of their own business?
Yeah. A business will never grow bigger than the CEO or the founder or the person that's in charge, right? And the reason for that is because you make the decisions at the end of the day, and you determine the standards of your team members, and you determine the vision and where you want to go. Now, can't be the bottleneck, but there has to be a balance, okay? Because I'll give you an example. If you as a CEO free up yourself to a point where you've got nothing to do, technically the business won't grow because you've got to be doing something, right? So there's a bit of a balance. I've met people that free up their time to a point where the business is running completely on its own and they've got hardly any involvement in it because they've automated it, they've done so well, but that becomes more of like a lifestyle sort of business rather than a business where you're trying to maybe scale or grow internationally. So there needs to be a bit of a balance. Now, my rule when it comes to delegation, if someone can do it 80% as well as you can, delegate it. So the reality is, as a CEO, as a founder or a business person, no one in most cases is going to do the job better than you unless you hire a seasoned professional. And most people, especially when they're running a business initially, they're not going to be doing that. They're just going to hire someone to do the role and they'll train. So if they can do it 80% as well as you can, delegate it, because that 20% is worth it, because then you can use up your time to do other things and grow. I have become quite proficient in being able to replace myself. So when I first started, I was a tutor. I replaced myself. And arguably, I'll tell you this, you'll find this really, really funny. The hardest role that I had to replace myself was the tutoring role. And the reason for that is because I was so invested in tutoring. I just loved it so much. I wanted to tutor all the kids and I didn't want to get anyone else to do it. But that was the hardest. When I hired the tutors and I took myself out of that, it just got easier and easier and easier. Like the second thing was hiring a manager, right, for the center, which we called a receptionist at that time. I did that role. I got someone to do that. Then I moved on and I did something else. So I was like, okay, now we've got a manager. So now we've got 3 locations. I'm going to have someone managing those managers. So we've done that. And then it just got easier to delegate, actually. But the hardest, and you find that really interesting, is actually the tutoring role was the hardest one that I had to delegate, because that was the one that I was most passionate about. But now in terms of delegation, it becomes like much more natural and more easier for me. This year, we brought on quite a few C-suite execs that are working with us at Success Tutoring, and they're all seasoned professionals in what they do. And so I feel very lucky and grateful to have them on the team. So so in terms of delegation, it's definitely become much easier. But for somebody that is running a small business or has just started becoming an entrepreneur, it does get easier, but it's definitely hard at the beginning.
I want to know more about your global expansion. I'm curious to know what makes a good franchise partner, because if I was to create my own franchise, I'd be qualifying potential partners, but I'm sure you've made a lot of mistakes from seeing the right partner and a good partner and the wrong partner. So can you elaborate a little bit about that? And are you doing it all yourself as well, like finding the right partners yourself, or are you getting other people to do it so that you can scale?
So our criteria has changed since we started. The first to openly say, when you first start to franchise, it's not uncommon for franchise businesses to be very salesy in the way that they bring on franchise partners, and they'll try their best to bring on franchise partners, and the criteria of qualification isn't as detailed as a business.
For anyone doing business internationally, Wise is a must-have tool. It's transformed how I handle payments to my team in Asia and purchases from Japan. With substantial savings, speedy transfers, and easy-to-use interface, Wise has revolutionized my approach to global finance. Click on my link to get started with Wise today and make payments easier and faster for your international team.
Maybe being a bit more mature would have a higher qualification or criteria. That's basically from the experience that we've had, and I've seen that happen a lot with a lot of franchising. Now, our criteria focuses on a few things. The first is, and the most important, is a passion for what we actually offer, which is tutoring services, and we want to help the kids succeed. So if somebody doesn't have a passion for that, then we won't be bringing them on as a franchise partner, because that is the key thing, because we are in the business of helping students succeed, dream big and work hard, and help them realize their full academic and personal ability. So that's very fundamental. Now, the second thing is obviously, having a good understanding of business, how business works, the fundamentals of business, and being able to follow a set rule book, because at the end of the day, that's what franchising is. You got to follow the system. And the third thing is a willingness to learn, because if you don't have that willingness to learn and adapt and have the humility to understand that you don't know everything and that you'll continuously learn. And that's with any business, because in any entrepreneur, any CEO has to have that understanding that they don't know everything. Because if you think you know everything, then you shouldn't be in business. You have to be in the mindset that you're constantly learning and you're constantly trying to understand from other people's perspective. And so that's the same sort of mindset we've implemented, and the mindset that we continue to when we select our franchise partners.
So have you had to let go of any that weren't the right fit?
We have had franchise partners exit the system for sure. And by doing so, they do that by selling their business. That's about as far as we've gone so far.
And then you're doing international expansion. What's been the biggest lesson from taking a business into a different country? Because I spoke to somebody earlier and he said that different regulations, different laws, and if you're trying to translate to a certain country, sometimes the translation is taken out of context as well. So tell us some key takeaways, lessons that you've learned from expanding internationally.
We've been very blessed to expand in New Zealand as the first international country because there's a lot of similarities, but there are some subtle differences, and we've learned that as well. Now, expansion into Canada, specifically in Vancouver, has been a really interesting one as well. There are some more larger cultural differences, particularly around, I'll give you an example. Our business is a membership based pay per week business model. In Canada and especially also the United States, they'll pay for services like this on a monthly basis. So it seems very similar, but actually it's quite different because when you start looking at charging customers on a monthly basis, you need to look at your systems and processes, look at your policies, procedures, and it does have a flow and effect on other departments, on marketing, for example, right? So these are some things that we've learned and we continue to learn. I always love to use McDonald's as a case study because the reality is McDonald's is one of the most successful franchise systems in the world. And most people will look at McDonald's and say, well, it's the exact same thing, copy and paste around the world. That is not true. You think that is the truth, but it's not. Because if you go to every country, they actually have a different menu.
They
And
adapt it.
if you go, for example, like if you go to India, for example, they don't have beef. They only have chicken, as an example, and vegetarian options. So people think franchising is copy and paste. It is copy and paste if you're in one market, like in Australia or in New Zealand. It's a copy and paste there. But there are some differences. There are definitely some differences when you look at different markets. And this is why when businesses expand overseas, it's very important that they can have the ability to adapt their model. Because if you just go in thinking, oh, I'm going to be just as successful as I am here, that is the wrong mindset. Because every time you expand into a new market, it's like you start from scratch.
Did you have to pay a lot for legal fees to expand overseas? Because I'm curious, I know that when you try to become a franchise, you have to pay a lot of legal fees already in Australia, but when it comes to international, are the fees different? Is it really high to use international legal franchise partners as like systems as well? How does that work? Is it really a lot different? And did you use a global partner to help you expand overseas?
Yeah, so in franchising, you can do master franchising. So you can bring on people that will take on the opportunity to open up the first location in that country, and then they'll expand and sell franchises and grant those across their particular area. So that's common in franchising. We did that in Canada and we're doing that in India as well as a partnership deal. As for the United States, decided to expand there ourselves. So it's not a master. So we're basically doing it the expansion ourselves as a company. In terms of legal fees, yeah, I mean, they are pricey and whenever you go into any market, you have to be prepared to invest. And that's sort of mindset I've had. And this is why I just basically invest everything back into the business because it's not cheap.
What are we looking at in terms of getting into Canada? If I wanted to create a franchise for my own company and I wanted to expand into the US, for example, or Canada, how much are we looking at roughly?
Well, it depends. I mean, it depends on the type of lawyer you use and the quality and your risk appetite. I mean, this is obviously not legal or accounting advice, but obviously you want to make sure you get the right attorney, like somebody that is credible and someone that's been in the industry for a while. Otherwise, you can probably get AI to make a contract for you these days, but that's not going to it might not hold up in
Yeah.
court or may not protect you as much. So you can do it for as cheap or as expensive as you intend to, but it just depends on your risk appetite. So everyone has different risk appetites. Some people might say, oh yeah, look, I'll just do it myself. Or some people might say, no, I want to get a really good attorney. Or someone might say, actually, no, I want to get just sort of a family attorney. I'm happy with that. So it depends on sort of the levels. Basically, the costs associated with this sort of stuff, especially in Canada and US, is quite substantial. So, for example, in Australia, again, not legal or accounting advice, but from my experience, I speak to a lot of people in the franchising space as well. I've got colleagues in the space as well. It might cost maybe $5 or $6, maybe sometimes $8,000 for a document, to get a franchise agreement created here in Australia. However, in the United States, it may be different.
Cool. So in terms of, you mentioned AI, and I'm fascinated what your thoughts are. I mean, I leverage AI with the business growth and everything, but how do you think AI is changing education and business, and what opportunities do you see that most people are missing?
AI is equivalent to the Industrial Revolution or even more. It's completely transformed the way people do business. It's going to create a huge equality balance, but inequality at the same time, meaning it puts people on the same level as Fortune 500 companies. Basically, what I mean to say is if somebody back in, okay, let's look at 10 years ago. If somebody needed to do something, okay, like if a business needed to implement a new product or service, right? A business would need, there's different types of businesses, but let's just look at like a really, really big business. A really big business would need to have a lot of staff and they'd use different departments. They have marketing department, HR, operations. Okay. And then basically what you need to do is you need to make sure they all are talking with each other to implement this new idea or initiative or product or service. Now, the reality is that the reason why a business would have that many departments is because they all specialize in different things. Now, these days, you can have one person sitting in their bedroom with an AI and it gives them the same information as what 5 professional departments would give them. So what it's actually done is it's made things much, much more accessible. It's even more accessible than internet because the internet just gave information that was there. But this is giving information that is adaptive to what the question is initially. So it's completely changed the way people look at information and the way they do business. Is AI going to replace teachers? No, it's not. I think we're very, very long way around that. But is it replacing people that would naturally code or naturally do research or analytics or analysis on certain investments or whatever? Yes, it does. And it writes very, very good blog posts. It can make really good content. Yes, it will probably replace a few jobs, but those jobs are going to be more advanced because they'll be thinking more on the strategy of how they can use the technology to better themselves. So, and this is why you see a lot of very large companies laying off a lot of their staff. It's because of that. There's no other explanation actually. Like they recognize that having less staff is more efficient than having more because with AI, you can work very, very quickly. Very, very quickly. In fact, if you have too many people using AI, it can actually slow down a business.
What do you mean? Elaborate on that.
So basically, I'll give you an example when it comes to coding as an example. If you're building a software, in the software process world, how it works is somebody has to push like code and updates to a software, right? So you have like one person being like the gatekeeper repository of the code. And basically what that means is only one person can approve new code that goes into the system. Now, these days with AI, the code can be done very, very quickly. So one person working on one technology is much more efficient than having 5 or 10 people working on one type of technology because in code can actually affect each other. Basically, it can crash. So you're more efficient having one person working on a new feature and having more than one person. Back, probably 5 years ago, even less than that, that was the reality of a lot of software companies. They needed a lot of people to make a lot of code. But now you don't need that. You just need one person that has a strategic mindset of understanding what needs to be built and getting the AI to build it. So in other words, having a team of 10 software developers is less efficient than having one person, using AI. And even if you have the 10 people using AI, don't think there'd be any company at this point in time where we are that would be able to get 10 software developers all using AI to work on the same product. It's not possible.
That's really relevant. It comes to mind too about me when I'm building my systems. I have 2 people trying to build new systems together with different codes, and I'm trying to get them to work together. But I think what you just said resonated because you don't want the code to be messed up. So that's very interesting. Now, I want to talk about what your visions are, what your dreams are for your company in the next 5 years. What does that look like?
We want to continue to grow. We want to continue to impact students across Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the US. We'll be expanding into India and also Singapore as well. We've got huge plans. We want to build Success Tutoring into a household name for education. We want to motivate the world. We want to build something that's going to last many, many generations. And we're super excited about that. And so that's what keeps me up at night. I wake up very early, energetic, excited for the new day. That's why we do what we do every single day. And that's why we'll continue to grow. So to answer your question, it's about growth, it's about impact, and it's about leaving a lasting impression.
Beautiful. Is there any key messages that you want to share with the audience? Anything that I've missed? Give a piece of advice, and afterwards, where can they connect and find you?
They're more welcome to connect. If they're looking at our Success Tutoring franchise opportunities, they can definitely connect there. We've got our website. If you just search up Success Tutoring Franchise, you'll be able to see a website, which is successtutoringfranchise.com. Information there. I've also wrote a book recently called Millionaire Tutor about my experiences in business. I've been in business for 10 years and there's been a lot of challenges and learnings that I've had. A lot of books have impacted me and pieces of information. So I've put that in the book as well. So more than happy to, for them to grab a copy of my book. It's on Amazon or any available online bookstore.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Michael. Guys, if you found any valuable tips, tell us what your key piece of takeaway was in the comments below. And please hit that subscribe button. If you're listening on the podcast, please do me a favor and hit that follow button. Thank you so much for your time, Michael. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Linda.